Hello and welcome to Developers Den by Newton School. I'm 𝐏𝐚𝐲, I'm a front-end developer, and we are going to continue our series of creating an NFT website using ReactJS, which is going to be a great project for your resume and where you're going to learn a lot of things. So in the previous video, we set up the folder and we created the basic file structure for our entire project. In this video, we are going to create the header and we are going to create the left side where we're going to show the title, we're going to show the buttons, we're going to also create reusable buttons in this video. So make sure you code along with me, and by the end of this video, you'll have that particular part done. So before we start, make sure that you have liked this video, you have subscribed to the channel, and that you are following along whatever I'm teaching. And if you have any doubt, make sure to comment. I'll reply you for sure. And also before we start, a big thanks to Newton School for helping me make this video. Newton School is a platform where they teach you full stack development and they promise you that you'll get a job. And the best part is you don't have to pay even a single penny unless and until you get a job. And the basic minimum package that they are telling you that you'll get will be 5 lakh rupees per annum. So that's a great platform. Do check it out. The link is in the description. Now, without any further delay, let's get started with the second part of the series, NFT website landing page. Let's go. Now we are going to continue creating our header and the main fold in this particular part. So what we will do is we'll go to our header, but before this, I'll close all the files because it's looking a little cluttered here. So now inside my header, the common convention that I follow is to give this a class name of the same as the file name. So I'll say header, and inside this header, I'll create another div, not div, a span basically, because if you'll see here, we are giving a gradient to the text. Now giving gradient to a text is a different type of styling we are going to use. So for this, we are going to give it a span instead of a div, and we will give this as a class name of heading gradient. Now, why this heading gradient? Because I'm going to use this particular class name throughout my code base. If you will see, this same style is given to this extraordinary text as well. This same style is given to trending NFTs. This same style is given to create and sell your NFTs and at the footer as well. So it's better to create a common class for this particular heading gradient and use it everywhere. So here I will say develops, and you can give it any name that you want. I'll say developers den as well, developers den. You can give it any name that you want, whatever website name you want it, you can give it. So now if you'll see here, develops developer den, it is here. Now what I will do is I'll copy this class name, I'll go to the header.css and start writing CSS for this particular file. So also I want everything to be center in this particular div, so I'll also use one more class called absolute center. Now just if you'll see, it is at the center right now. So using common classes is really helpful. With just but one class, everything is centered. Now for my header, what I want is I want the font size to be of 40 pixel. Now apart from font size, I want the font weight of 800, sorry, not 800, I'll see 700. How is it looking? It's looking quite good. And then I want everything to be as uppercase. So I'll say text transform as uppercase. And next to this, if you'll see right now, it is looking like this, which is quite good. But I want few more things. First of all is padding. I want particular gap from top. So I'll say 12 pixel, from left 0 pixel, and from bottom 0 pixel. So writing padding, there are a lot of ways of writing padding. If you follow like this 3-point padding, so this is for the top, this is for the left and right, this is for bottom. You can write in two-way and in single as well. So next thing is I want letter spacing. So if you'll see there, the gap between the text, I want it to be letter spacing to be as 12 pixel will do. Now it's looking good, but right now it's a cursor. I don't want it to be a cursor. So selectable text. So I want it to be as cursor pointer. So I'll say curpo. Now if you'll see, this is looking like a logo, but I just have to give it some classes to make it look like this. So for this, what I will do is also this developers gen is looking way big. So what I'll do, I'll just remove this. I'll keep it like this only. This, perfect. So now to give it the text gradient like this, what I will do is I will go to my copy this particular class name and I'll go to my common classes, and here I'll write the classes CSS for this particular class. So what I want is I want a particular background color. So if I look here at the background color here, so what we can do right now, we can directly copy it, or because since I have already declared it, So I'll just copy this particular linear gradient. You can create your own gradient by create linear gradient online. So create linear gradient. So just by going to this particular website, cssgradient.io, you can create your own gradient that you want. I created this from here only, and you can copy the CSS from here. So I'll just copy this particular CSS. You can pause this video and you can copy this. So I'll just copy two classes, two gradients. So first one is, and I'll save this. So as you can see, the text gradient background, I am keeping this inside this variable, and it is RGB 105.235.4.203, and the text gradient 1, similarly like this. So you can just go to this website, you can create any gradient that you want, experiment with the colors, change it accordingly, whatever color you want, keep it that only. Now, if I'll go to my common classes, now inside my heading gradient, what I can say is I want the background to be a variable which is text gradient bg. Now, why do we need a background if we are keeping a gradient color on the top? Because sometimes, suppose if many of the browsers are not supporting gradient background, so for that the fallback should be there. So this particular style will be applied only if a browser doesn't support linear backgrounds. Now I'll say background as where I'll say text gradient 1, text grade, you can give it any variable name that you want. So I'll say text gradient 1, and now if you'll see, this is how it's looking like. But this is not we want, right? We want it to, the gradient to be on the text, not below the text. So for this we need two more property. First one is background clip. So background clip, what it will do, it will clip anything above it. So I'll say text. So background clip text. Now if you'll see, it is not looking because it just clipped the background. Clip means cut it down. Now we need a fill color for this. So for the fill color, I'll say WebKit. WebKit is used by browsers. So WebKit text fill color. So for the WebKit text fill color, I'll say transparent. So for this particular text, so what was happening, for the text, it was already white. So I made it transparent so that we can see below it. And what was below it? Below it was a gradient. So this is how it is looking right now. So this looks perfect. Now what we can do is we can start styling, creating our top fold component. Now for the top fold component, it is a little complex and it is by far the most important component of this particular landing page, because all your focus, if you'll see, is on this page only. So what we can do is we can now break this. I'll keep myself here. So what we can do is we can break this into components. So this particular, I'm calling it as top fold left, and this I'm calling it as top fold right. So there are two parts inside this top fold right now that you can see. Again, I'm repeating, one is top fold left and one is top fold right. So let's create two divs inside the top fold. So what I will do is two divs inside the top fold. So here is my top fold, and here I will do this. I'll say this is div, and I'll give it a class name of so first of all, as I told you that I give the first class name to the topmost div, and it is same as the file name. So this will be top fold. Perfect. Now this particular class name is going to be tf left and tf right. Now why this? Because tf will be stands for tf, so that we can find that each class name which file it belongs to. Therefore, and apart from this, I'll also give it a common class of absolute center. Now this will be tf left, and the next div will be tf right. Now this div will be tf right. Now we have two divs, top fold left and top fold right. So first of all, what we will do is we will style the left part. To style the left part, we just have to know what are all there inside this left div. One is a heading, one is some description, then we have buttons, and then finally some stats. So what we will do is we'll create the heading first of all. So I'll create a div, and here I will say that this is the heading. So I will copy this particular text from here. I'll copy this and I'll paste it here. Now for this extraordinary, I want it to be in a span. Why? Because I want it to be shown as a gradient, right? So I will copy this and I'll paste it inside here, remove it from here. Now you can see it. Now this is what it looks like, and I'll give it a class name of tf heading. So which means top fold heading. Now, if I'll go to my application, you can see discover, collect, and sell extraordinary NFTs. Now, this looks perfect. So, what we will do is we will just go and style the top fold left and top fold heading section, heading class first of all. So, and before that, this particular top fold as well. So, I'll go here and for my top fold, I'll say it is already displaying as flex, everything as center. So the next thing that I want is it to be have a height of 92 view height. Now what this will do is this will give it a width height of 92 view height so that everything I can display it in the center of my this screen. So the next thing is overflow as hidden. So if anything uh, flows outside of this div, I want it to be as hidden. So I'll say overflow as hidden. Perfect. Now it looks good. The next thing that I want to style is top fold left. Now inside my top fold, if you see left, you will see there is one part, two part, three part, and four part. So I want all of these to be on top of each other. So for that, I want to be displayed as flex, and along with flex, I want it to be in the direction of column, not row, because by default, flex is in the direction of row. I want it to be as column. So therefore, what I'll say for top fold left, I will say display as flex and flex direction, give it column. Now everything will be in a column. So if you here, suppose we have a div and this div is just the description that we have here. So I'll say give it a class name of tf description, and inside the description I'll just copy this particular text here. You can write any text that you want. I'm just going to copy this. So I am not unable to copy it. Anyway, I'll just write it. Please make sure that you are buying and selling the most trending NFTs out there. Welcome to my channel. Uh, Developers Den. That's it. I hope this will do. Yep. So we have some text here right now. So for this particular text, what I will do, now you can see it is by default in a column, like it's on top of each other because of the flex direction property. So now here, next to text, this left, next thing I want it to have a flex of 1. Flex 1, which means that take all the space that is available to you. Now next to flex 1, I will have padding right as 48 pixel. Now why padding right? Because you can see there is some gap between this and the right part. So therefore padding right as 48 pixel. And that's it, I guess. If I'll save it now, this is what it's looking like. So let me just check one thing, that why do we have it like this? Where is cursor pointer? Okay, so we forgot to apply one particular class inside our application, which is inside the app.js. Here I wanted to have a class of max width. If you remember, in the first video we declared a class called max width inside the common class, which means that it should have a width of only 80% by default. So now you can see there is proper gap in the left and the right as well. So this is what it is looking right now. Once we put the right side of the component for the top fold section, the images will come up and this will automatically shrink. So we will go to top fold, and here now for this top fold, next thing that I want is obviously to style the TF heading. So for TF heading, also for this span, we can give it a class name of heading gradient. Now if we look, this particular extraordinary is looking perfectly how I wanted it to look. Now I'll copy this particular class name TF heading. I'll go to my top fold and here I will style it. So now for TF heading, the classes that I want, the style that I want is the font size to be of 72 pixel. Next, font weight to be of let's say 700, and 600 we can give it, because it's looking a little too dark. So yeah, apart from 600, I can give it a line height. So what is line height? You can see there is some gap between these two is a lot. So I want to reduce it manually. I'll say line height. So line height is line between two lines inside in the HTML file. So I'll say 72 pixel. So it's a little less now. So automatically it will shrink and it will come to the next line once we have the right side of the top fold. So next to the top fold heading, let's style the top fold description. So I'll say description. Okay, perfect. Now for this, I want the font size to be of 20 pixel only, and I want the margin. Now margin, if you write it like this, just two margins, which is 24 pixel and 0 pixel, this means that 24 pixel will be applied to the margin top and margin bottom, and 0 pixel will be applied to the margin left and margin right. So now if you look, there is some gap between the heading and the description. So this is it. The description is also done. What we will do right now is, next to the description, we have some buttons here. Now, if you'll see, we have two buttons. One is a primary button, one is a secondary button. So for this, if you go down, you can see that this same button is being reused here as well. So, and if your project is really big, you might reuse this button a lot of times. So it's better to create a common component known as buttons instead of writing the whole CSS HTML component every time. So what I'll do is, I'll go to my common, and inside my common, I'll create a file called as buttons. Buttons, just button will do. So in the button, I'll say index.js, and here I'll say RAFCE. Quickly it will create a component for me. I'll say button. Now also I'll need a CSS file here, button.css. Now I'll import this style file here. So I'll say import and button.css. Perfect. Now I'll give some spacing here. Now let us understand what kind of props my button will receive. Now props, we pass it to the child component so that they can use it. So in React, if you're not sure what props are, what states are, I highly recommend you that you go to React docs and you study more about it, or you can follow my channel, because in my further videos, I'll be explaining everything in detail. So this button, there could be two types. One could be a primary, one could be a secondary. There should be a text for this, and there should be an on-click function. So generally, these are the props that we get in our button. So props, by default, React components have this props inside them, so we can directly use it. So we can say const. Now what I'm doing here is I'm destructuring from my JavaScript. So props is kind of an object. It will have all the props that you pass to it, and by this convention, we can destructure from JavaScript. So destructuring, you should read more about it on React docs or JavaScript docs basically. So what kind of props are we going to have? Button type. Next up, we are going to have button text, btn text. Next to the button text, I'll say btn on click, which means what should happen when we click on the button. And finally, custom class. I suppose besides our default button, if I want to style it further to make it more reusable, you should always pass a prop known as custom class for all your UI components. So for my div, now for the class name is going to be very dynamic based on what kind of component we are passing. So we are going to use this string template. Now class is always a string, right? And inside your class name, you can't use variables, but inside your strings, you can't use variable. But by using backticks, you convert it into string templates, and there you can use variables very easily. So here I will say, I'll write some JavaScript, some ternary operator. I'll say that if btn type, which means btn type is equal to primary. Now, which means that if my button type is primary, then what you should do, then you should pass this class. If you're not sure what ternary operator does, it is just simple thing like this, like A is equal to B question mark C else D. Now I'll quickly explain. Now suppose this particular thing is true. Now if A is equal to B, then this part is returned, this result is returned, otherwise this is returned. So this is what ternary operator does. So I'm doing it here only. So now if the button type that I'm passing is primary, then what you should do is just return this class name. I'm passing 3-4 class names: button, then primary button, and then finally custom class. Whatever custom class you have, just pass it here. Now, and else if the button type is not primary, let us say it is secondary or tertiary, then in that case, return this thing. Instead of primary, just do secondary, and that's it. Now if you'll see, there is some error. Why? Because we are not closed. We are closing it. Let me just see what kind of error is there. Custom class is there, then we have this. Okay, we don't need it here right now. Okay, let me see what is wrong here. So I will just cut everything out from here, and I'll again see what I'm doing wrong here. I'll say that if my button type is equal to primary, then question mark, then this, otherwise this. Yeah, now it's working fine. Now here what I want, a class name of button, a class name of primary button, and a variable of custom class, custom class. Perfect. Now I'll just copy this thing and I will paste it inside this. Now I'll save it. Now if the button type is primary, return these class names, otherwise return these class names. Secondary button. Perfect. Now instead of this button here, I will say whatever button text is being passed by my button. Now this particular button on click is remaining. So whenever I click on the button, what should happen? On click, whatever button on click function we have passed, this should be executed. So this is it. This is the index file for button. Now I'll quickly go to my button.css and I'll start styling this particular button. So for my button, now for you to see it properly, what we will do, we will just go to our top fold, and next to this top fold description, what I will do is I'll import those buttons. So I'll create a div here. So I'll create a div here and call it tf left buttons. So inside my div here, I will call two buttons, button, and let's call it tf left buttons. Right, this is my buttons for the left. So instead of buttons, I can call it btns. Now this is a primary button and this is a secondary button. So what I will do is I'll give a type here. Sorry, not type. I'll say btn type. Whatever prop you are using there, make sure that the names are same throughout your components. So I'll say button type, this is primary, and for this the button type is going to be secondary. Now if I save it, now next to this button text as well. So I'll say button text, this is explore, and this is btn text is, our button text is here, let's say create. Perfect. Now if I see here, you can see explore and create are here. We just have to style them. Also, now if I go to button.css, I'll say for my button, I want to style it, right? So for to style it, what I will do, I'll say first of all, I need a padding. Padding needs to be 15 pixel from top and bottom, and from left and right, I need it to be 55 pixel. So you can see there is some padding right now. Now next to the padding, I want it to have a font size of 24 pixel by default. Next thing is I want it to have a font weight of 600, and next to it I want it to be circular. So right now you can't see it, because just to show you what is happening, I'll say background color to be Alice blue, so that you can see what's happening right now. Instead of Alice blue, I can give it some darker color, and let's say this aqua. You can see what's happening right now. I'll remove this line later on. So next to this, I'll say border radius of 60 pixel, so that the borders are curved, and then we need a width of max content, which means instead of expanding throughout the div, just take whatever content inside is given to you. Now apart from width, I want cursor to be pointer. So you could use the common class here as well, but I'm just writing it here. No worries. Now you can see these are looking like exactly like the buttons. I'll remove this particular class name here. Now depending on what my button is, I'm going to use it. So for primary button, I'm going to use a different background color. So first of all, I'll say that the color should be white. So where white. Now I'll go to my variables file and I'll declare one more variable here, which is button background. So I'll say here btn bg. So for my button background, what it will be hashtag 2f80ed, 2f80ed. So I got this from the internet, this particular class. You can create your own button by just trying out different colors that you can use here. So now you can see, if in my button, apart from this, I'll say background color to be variable btn BG. Perfect. Now BT and BG should be working fine. If I see, yeah, this is looking exactly like the button that we have here. Now for my secondary button, I want something else. So for the secondary button, so I'll say secondary button. For my secondary button, I want a border, not here. I want a border here, border of let's say 2 pixel, which will be solid, and the color I want it to be of white. Now if you see, the create button is also working, looking perfect. Now we have created our buttons. We just have to style these buttons in a flex, like in a row. So for that, I will go inside my index here, and also for this I want some gap now. Okay, so I'll tell you what I'm doing here. Now I'll just copy this tf left buttons class name, and inside my css files I'll paste it, and I'll give it some styling here. So inside my tf left buttons, I'll say margin top to be of let's say 36 pixels, so that there should be some gap. Let me see how it's looking. It's looking perfect. Next up, we want display as flex. Now if you'll see, these are looking like this, but for this button I want some space between the two buttons. So what we are going to do is, we need some margin here. So I'll go here and I'll pass a custom class here. So if you remember, we had a prop known as custom class as well. So I'll give it a custom class called as custom class known as tf left secondary button. So you can give any custom class. I'll just copy this now, save it inside my topfold.css, and I'll paste it. I'll say margin left as 36 pixel, 36 pixel. Now if you'll see, the buttons are looking perfectly like how we wanted them to look. Now next to this, if I look at my this thing, this left part, we have this community, what let's say we have this community stats basically. So to add those community stats, what we are going to do is, uh, just we'll say info stats. So I'll say next to my div here, I'll create another div. Okay, let me close everything so that you can see. Here we have our heading, our description, our buttons. Now next to our buttons, we need info stats. So I'll say class name as tf left info stats. Now inside the info stats, we have 3 info item basically. All these are info items. So I'll create just one info item first to see how it looks. So I'll give it a class name of tf left info item instead of tf left. Now since it's inside a info stats div, I can just call it is for info stat, and I'll call it as info item. Now inside my info item, we have two things. One is the count and one is the label. Now this 200k is count and this is label. So what I'll say, I'll create 2 more div very quickly. One, and this is going to be our tf info item, info item, and this is my count. Let's say this is, for now, this is just 200k plus. And the next, I just copy this, and this is, instead of count, this is label. And what the label is collections. Perfect. Now if you'll see here, it's looking like this. So what I'll do, I'll copy this twice and paste it. Now there are 3 stats basically, and the other is 10k plus artist. So I'll say 10k plus artist. You could have created a common component for this and used it again and again, but since these are just 3, I'm copying and pasting the code here. But if it would have been more than 3, let's say 4, 5, 6, I could have created a common different component for this info item and reused it here. Next up, we have 423 plus k community. 423k plus community. Perfect. Now it looks like this. We just have to style these items. So for info stats, I'm going to style separately, which will be a flex to keep everything inside a row. And for info item, I'm going to keep everything on top of each other. So the flex direction here will be obviously column. So let's go to info stats. For this, I'll go to topfold.css. I'll say that topfold left info stats. Now inside this info stats, I'll say that display as flex, and I'll say the padding to be 48 pixel from top and from left and right I want 0 pixel, 0 pixel. Now if you see, everything is inside a row. Now next to this I want the info item to be there, so I'll say top fold info stat info item. Now for this I just want some margin to be there, so I'll say margin right to be as 24 pixel. Now you see there is some gap between these two. Now for this, for each of the count that we have, I'll say tf uh, tf info item count info. Make sure that the class name that you're using here is same as that what you provided in the previous file, otherwise the styles won't be applied. So for this count I want the font size to be of 36 pixel, and then I want the font weight to be of 600. Now if you look here, this is how the stats are looking. Now I need one more thing. I'll say display, instead of displaying as flex here, I'll say flex direction to be column, and here apart from info item I'll just give it one more class which is absolute center. Now what this will do, this will center everything for me vertically. So I'll paste it and paste it, and if I look here you can see it is centered, it is centered, it is centered. Now we just have to change the label. So I'll say tf info item and then label. Now for the label, I just want the font size to be 14 pixel and then the font weight to be 600. Now if you'll see, this looks perfect. So this is how my particular stats are looking, and I guess this is it about the left part of my top fold. So if you will see, the left part of the top fold is done. So I'll wrap this video now because it's already 30 minutes long. So in the next video, what we will do is we will create this particular component, this component where you see the GIFs and it is placed in such a eye-pleasing order. I'll say you could have placed it in a grid, we could have placed it in a diamond. I'll show you all those styles in the next video. And along with this, this is just one small component. I'll be creating this component in the next video as well along with it. So I hope you learned a lot in this particular video, and if you're liking this series so far, make sure that you like this video, you subscribe to the channel so that you get regular updates, and see you in the next video. Thank you. Bye.